Today's conversation is only the beginning. It's drawn from a larger workshop inside our private leadership community. Each workshop culminates in a ready-to-deploy digital toolset, interactive dashboards, forecasting models, workflow automations, stakeholder maps, diagnostics, sales assets, project management frameworks, mini CRMs, an ever-expanding arsenal designed for immediate, real-world impact. These tools are released under our sister brand, Ascend Intelligence, Beyond Business Intelligence. Built directly on Google Cloud Platform and Google Workspace, Ascend Intelligence delivers enterprise-grade reliability, security, and AI-powered analytics, giving you a strategic edge from day one. If today's topic resonates with you, know that the full workshop is already on our shelf or slated for release, and we can open it to you on request. Reach out and claim the Ascend Intelligence tool that turns today's ideas into tomorrow's results.
One, entering the Catalyst system. Origins. From the empty spaces of non-existence came the surges of relentless, unwavering creative force. Surging gases and black holes fractured the fabric of space-time, and from these upheavals creations were forged into being. These violent, energetic storms were forces of inception and upheavals of will. Collisions of pressure and torrents of searing force carved the architecture of creation. Matter collapsed under its own gravity, and it forged heavier elements and scattered their fire back into the fabric of the cosmos. In the vast spans that followed, those remnants gathered into new clouds and currents, and wove the raw substance of future worlds into vast architectures of form. Across those eons, the cosmos writhed, and yet remained whole. Every fracture and fury was bound into the hidden symmetry of a greater design. The design revealed itself through fractal repetition. Self-similar patterns echoed across every scale of existence. From the smallest turbulence of gas to the vast filaments of the cosmic web, each recursion mirrored the geometry of creation itself. Storm mirrored storm. Spiral reflected spiral. A rhythm older than stars moved through the void. From its resonance, galaxies emerged. They became vast whirls of light, suspended in perfect balance. Together they traced the silent architecture of the cosmos. It was a pattern found not in chaos, but in a self-similar rhythm that united the smallest fold of energy with the grandest designs of space. The filaments of dark matter that stretched between galaxies carried this same recursive signature. Creation did not move in disorder. It unfolded through a fractal harmony, where every form echoed the whole, and even as time itself bore witness, all chaos moved in perfect harmony and symmetry, fulfilling its purpose to generate, to bring forth, and to give rise to new beginnings. From these origins, galaxies took shape out of primordial clouds of gas. Within their vastness, ancient suns lived and died, leaving behind remnants that consecrated the silent reaches of space. From those remnants, new clouds gathered and coalesced once more, giving rise to newborn solar systems. As Earth had exploded into existence, the same creative forces that had spun the multiverses into existence were interwoven into the DNA of the world. And in time, those energies cohered into patterns, giving humanity form as the expression of the greater unseen intelligences. These great consciousnesses, bound to create in their own likenesses, rhythms, and laws, over millennia garnered momentum within Earth's energetic landscapes. These high priests wove their rulerships into the fiber of humanity through religions, mythologies, cultural traditions, and commerce. The living entities became the structures themselves. Systems of laws were forged by the guidance of the energies that had self-assembled as a means of self-expression. They became the everlasting dogmas of order and influence. The movements of humanity were formed, not merely as beliefs of mankind, but as living expressions of themselves. They became enduring fields, real, sovereign, and vast. The living structures and the architects stretched across generations, and myth gave them faces and thrones. They had never ceased to be sacred forces forged in the storm's fury, now trapped in time, and subjugated to the lower world's rhythms, logics, and laws. At this beginning, humanity moved within currents greater than itself, being enslaved to unseen kingdoms that shaped imagination, loyalty, and fear. These greater forces determined what could be perceived, desired, and defied. They formed the foundations of every spiritual and energetic path set before each. Every life was summoned to create in the image and likeness of that which summoned them, as creation itself continued the ancient pattern, begetting likeness after likeness. That summons carried both the promise and the burden of existence. Humanity creating in the likeness of their creators was not mere reflection but participation. It was a sacred labor, demanding devotion and sacrifice. Through it, human life was bound again and again to a greater order that no one could command or escape. Each generation continued the fractal, shaping their world in the likeness of their dominions. The sovereigns of commerce compelled the creation of empires of trade, control, and systems of power. The hierarchs of faith gave rise to religions bound by devotion and creed. The governors of knowledge established institutions of learning and doctrines of reason. Each act of creation reflected the power from which it was born. As riddles across civilizations, time had given rise to sacred texts, philosophies, and systems of number, each a revelation of higher intelligences that had impressed their patterns upon the world of form. Scriptures had thundered of kingdoms and dominions, casting history as a contest between temporal authority and divine rule. The Vedas and Puranas had preserved the struggles of Devas and Asuras, titanic beings whose conflicts had marked the rhythm of cosmic law. Buddhist sutras had charted realms where consciousness had been bound to cycles of hunger, war, and release, detailing the architecture of suffering and awakening. Greek tragedies, Mesopotamian epics, and Norse sagas had testified to sky gods, sea lords, and keepers of death and trade. Their stories had borne witness to the true authorship through drama and ritual. Philosophical schools and orders had arisen, and mathematics had descended from that same illumination, both reflecting the divine patterns by which existence had been measured and sustained. Human understanding took many shapes across history. Each culture, in its own way, reached the same realization. Life was never self-contained. It unfolded within greater orders that gave it meaning and form. It had always moved within greater powers that shaped its course. Story carried that truth forward, preserving the memory of those forces that formed the world. Each story had carried its own ascent, yet together they had stood as the testimony of the ancients, preserving encounters with realities too vast for any single tongue to hold. Every rite had echoed the cadence of creation. Every theorem had reflected its symmetry. Every myth had borne truths older than language, and every genealogy had bound fleeting lives to immensities that had outlasted empires. Through such vessels, the hidden currents of the universe had disclosed themselves, demanding recognition and shaping human destiny with a gravity as undeniable as the stars. Two, entering the Catalyst system. The present, now, this is the path before us. The universe is not inert matter, but a living field of electrovibration, order, and hidden symmetries. Every movement echoes through unseen structures. What is witnessed as chance or chaos at the surface is, at depth, a choreography of forces. And it is within this living field that the universe discloses its larger currents, shaping destiny through vast architectures of rhythm and law, all of which are bound to their unseen systems. Every visible form is a reflection of its deeper order and truth. Rhythm remains consecrated, and consciousness remains unbroken. This hidden order compels coherence. They draw every force into relationship, binding matter into galaxies, planets into orbits, and light into pathways that inscribe the structure of infinity. What is understood as silence is filled with hidden resonance, and what seems void is already alive with alignment. Every motion and every vibration becomes part of a greater pattern, a choreography through which the unseen universe holds its order and summons all beings into its design. From this vantage of initiation, the universe discloses itself as a living tapestry of vast kingdoms, each a pulsing center of gravity shaping the currents of history and thought. These fields are not metaphors, but ruling presences, deciding which visions ascend and which sink into silence, which patterns endure and which dissolve. Humanity moves inside them as sleepers, repeating their rites in belief, in culture, and in the smallest gestures of daily life, binding itself to architectures it cannot see. Even in sleep, the touch of these kingdoms is felt. Their presence shapes archetypes in societies, markets, languages, and desires. They move through imagination itself, carrying the human condition within rhythms older than memory. To awaken is not to leave these kingdoms, but to perceive them, to recognize the patterns as living forces, and to begin working within their currents rather than drifting unknowing. And yet deeper still, within the invisible boundaries of environments, these rulerships are kingdoms within kingdoms, all ruling their eminent domains. Inside each domain are various entities and energetic phenomena. Some entities and phenomena emerge through necessity, and others evoked from different dimensional realities. These entities are present to keep order and balance of what has been wrought in time. Among them, the most relevant to the progression of humanity are the gatekeepers and the catalysts. Gatekeepers preserve boundaries, ensuring that forms remain stable and resistant to intrusion. They protect structures, but they also impose limitations, preventing what lies beyond the threshold from entering and also resisting any ignition or growth. Catalysts stand in contrast, pressing against walls and forcing energy into motion. They do not preserve, they ignite, transforming stasis into movement and dormancy into activation. Within the ecology, the gatekeepers stand like sentinels at the thresholds, while catalysts strike the spark that shifts the current, preserving or transforming according to their charge. Within the field of experience, energetic phenomena arise through certain motions, intentions, environments, and conditions. Catalysts, seen in their true role, are forces that awaken and accelerate human potential. Under correct devotion, intention, and appropriation, one may witness the spark of these catalysts within one's own humanity, as they stir hidden gifts and awaken personal potentials. They appear in people, places, practices, and events that shift perception and open possibility. Human beings themselves carry a spectrum of potentials, from profound creation to destructive collapse, and catalysts intensify whichever direction is present. Three, entering the catalyst system. The real. It must be understood that all that exists is animated by forces that move with rhythm and law, even when such law is not immediately apparent to the senses. What appears random or chaotic is in truth a pattern concealed, awaiting recognition by disciplined perception. Energy does not drift without structure. It coheres into fields, pulses, and alignments that set the terms for experience. To recognize a catalyst is to discern its power to set hidden forces in motion. Yet a single catalyst is only the beginning. In a catalyst system, these sparks are gathered, aligned, and directed, their energy magnified through deliberate arrangement. A catalyst system is born from this recognition, because only in an energetic universe could the deliberate orchestration of catalysts hold its true weight. To understand such a system is not to imagine new forces, but to arrange existing ones into coherence. Each kingdom endures like a sovereign ruler, establishing frameworks within which societies move and develop. To move within such a catalyst system, one must acknowledge these kingdoms, for they form the stage on which all catalysts must operate. They are not abstract or symbolic, but active powers that direct devotion, govern action, and regulate possibility. A system that intentionally gathers catalysts is one that approaches this terrain awake, recognizing the invisible topography and bending its energies rather than being bent by them. Only by perceiving this hidden architecture can one understand the true ground on which all change is labored, and where transformation must be forged. A catalyst system, then, is not random or accidental, but a structured orchestration of catalysts aligned to intention. So a catalyst system combines catalysts into a unified field. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts, because the arrangement itself creates resonance that no single element could produce. This is architecture, not accident, technology, not chaos, designed to generate transformation with precision and inevitability. A catalyst system provides not only activation but direction, ensuring that the energies released do not scatter but cohere into outcome. It is this orchestration that makes a catalyst system distinct from individual sparks of change. To engage with such a system is to work with the very structure of transformation itself. Each force is necessary, for without resistance there is no form, and without disruption there is no growth. The dance between them generates the very rhythm of history. Recognizing this tension allows one to perceive the hidden architecture of change. The gatekeeper defends, the catalyst ignites, and together they shape the movement of existence. Catalysts are not abstract ideas but living forces that set dormant potentials into motion. So a catalyst system combines catalysts into a unified field. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts, because the arrangement itself creates resonance that no single element could produce. This is architecture, not accident, technology, not chaos, designed to generate transformation with precision and inevitability. A catalyst system provides not only activation but direction, ensuring that the energies released do not scatter but cohere into outcome. It is this orchestration that makes a catalyst system distinct from individual sparks of change. To engage with such a system is to work with the very structure of transformation itself. Each force is necessary, for without resistance there is no form, and without disruption there is no growth. The dance between them generates the very rhythm of history. Recognizing this tension allows one to perceive the hidden architecture of change. The gatekeeper defends, the catalyst ignites, and together they shape the movement of existence. The system functions much like a mystery school, collecting practices and presences into a structure that generates profound change. The logic is simple but powerful. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. One catalyst can spark a shift, but a field of catalysts arranged with precision generates acceleration and depth. The system magnifies resonance, ensuring that transformation does not occur sporadically but continuously. Intention binds the system together, guiding the direction of ignition so that awakened potential moves toward coherence rather than dispersal. The participant does not merely encounter individual sparks but enters a sustained field of ignition. The result is transformation of unusual intensity. The system is therefore both revelation and discipline. Revelation, because it discloses the hidden order already present in the field of energies. Discipline, because it requires fidelity to the practices that sustain its resonance. The initiate who enters such a system steps into a pattern designed to reorder perception and reality. What was once scattered becomes aligned, and what was dormant becomes active. The system does not invent coherence but uncovers it, pressing against perception until order is revealed. Fidelity ensures that this order becomes stable, shaping not only momentary experience but the very architecture of life. The summation. The monad catalyst system declares the architecture of existence as an ordered cosmos governed by immutable laws: symmetry, rhythm, correspondence, and sovereignty. These laws weave perception into event, thought into circumstance, and thereby compose the machinery of being. Within this architecture, the system inserts keys, subtle interventions that interrupt habitual enactments of those laws and open thresholds into alternate geometries of reality. These keys operate like tuned apertures in a grand mechanism, permitting selective passage beyond the expected curvature of cause and effect. Participants receive access that functions as both revelation and instrument, an understanding of how the laws carry momentum together with protocols that press upon seams where continuity yields. What appears as surrender to an ancient order becomes the ground for daring interference, a craft that borrows the language of law while bending its trajectory. The system offers initiation into a working that reframes inevitability into opportunity, turning fixed sequences into ladders that lift consciousness toward emergent realms. This entrance into mastery feels effortless in measure because the daily commitment is brief. Within those minutes, a disciplined pressure accumulates until resistance dissolves, and the world answers with uncanny fidelity. The initiation is dramatic in consequence, precise in method, and absolute in its insistence that the participant accept responsibility as author and steward of the altered field. Mastery arises through twin pathways: the spontaneous surrender of the habitual self and the steady cultivation of disciplined practice. Both routes converge in the same result: reconfigured reality that obeys the new center established by the initiate. The work spares the seeker from decades of blind trial. It compresses initiation into concentrated practice that unleashes disproportionate effect. As rhythms of life reorder, alignments assemble with mechanical clarity, and internal images solidify into outward architecture. Speech acquires formative weight, imagination becomes a seedbed of event, and attention grows into instrumentality that sculpts fate. The system interrupts the laws that cradle existence and forces an opening where continuity bends. Law becomes scaffolding only after disruption, reshaped to reveal seams that lead beyond its usual reach. Participants engage law not as an untouchable order, but as a structure redirected through precise intervention. Correspondence turns into lever when its chain is reset. Rhythm becomes current when its pulse is broken and retuned. Symmetry becomes portal when its balance shifts. What was inevitability unfolds as pliability, momentum as substance that can be redirected. This engagement is not surrender but craft, a measured interference that reconfigures the path of cause into a ladder of ascent. Devotion in this work is marked by constancy, not frenzy, by fidelity to the practice, not by force. In return, sovereignty takes form as inevitability reshaped, reality compelled to new design by the altered frame of law itself. The supreme wisdom of God has led him to choose the laws of motion in the most perfect and harmonious manner, those most suited to metaphysical reason, so that we find ourselves in the best of all possible worlds, where the greatest variety is joined to the greatest order, and perfection is carried as far as it can go. For all the possibilities of things are in the divine understanding, yet only those consistent together can exist. And of all possible series, it is this one, the simplest in hypothesis, the richest in phenomena, that comes to pass. Principles of Nature and Grace, Section 6. To recognize this is to understand that law is not a chain but a medium, not fixed stone but living pattern, the very ground upon which ascent becomes possible. In this recognition, the initiate perceives that inevitability itself is pliable, that what appears as constraint is in truth a hidden passage, and that sovereignty lies in learning to bend the law of a perfect order into the ladder of creation. Now, what you will find below is the formal structure by which entry is granted and the path unfolds. It begins with agreement and consent, proceeds through orientation and preparation, and advances toward the 9 gates where instruction is conferred. Each stage is deliberate, carrying its own weight of responsibility and meaning, so that entry into this architecture is never casual but always grounded in clarity and order. Access and agreement. Access to this technology is strictly controlled and extended by invitation only. Prospective participants must submit the information requested below and explicitly assent to the terms of entry. Acceptance is conditional, not automatic. This assent constitutes a formal agreement to proceed according to the protocols and ethical responsibilities that govern the work. The proprietary nature of the method requires confidentiality and a binding commitment to the conditions detailed in the subsequent sections. No access will be granted without documented consent and completion of the intake requirements. Preparation and orientation. This phase forges candidates through concentrated preparatory work, equipping them with the inner instruments and disciplined practices that will carry them through the system. Participants are oriented to the path before them. Their attention, embodied presence, and perceptual capacities are trained and refined, and the program's operational specifics remain protected. The orientation sets forth the framework for participation so each initiate may proceed with clarity and responsibility. Admission into the instructional sequence requires demonstration of these cultivated capacities so instruction unfolds upon a secure and living foundation. The 9 gates in foundational instruction. The pathway within the system unfolds through 9 successive gates, each of which is presented as a distinct consciousness and comprehension. Passing each gate is accompanied by a lecture on the foundational principles that undergirds the infrastructure of the work. These presentations are conceptual and contextual rather than procedural, designed to convey the depth, intention, and scope of the system. The sequence is pedagogical. It builds conceptual mastery and prepares the initiate for progressively deeper encounters with the living architecture. Participants thereby gain the necessary orientation to appreciate the system's potential without receiving proprietary operational techniques outside of the secure, consented forums where they are taught. Conduct, custody, and continuity. Participation requires ongoing adherence to the terms of membership, including confidentiality, respectful conduct, and a pledge to apply the work with integrity. The custodianship of the method is communal and graded. Privileges, further instruction, and deeper access are contingent upon demonstrated responsibility and sustained engagement. The system is designed to preserve both the safety of participants and the coherence of the practice. Administrative review and stewardship ensure continuity and guard against misuse. In this way, the work remains an invitation into a cultivated field rather than an open or casual offering. Please proceed through the Google form to complete your intake and record your consent. This step is required to begin. Welcome to the current. You are on the brink of a disciplined path where steady practice opens access to the deeper order this work reveals.